yesterday, Le Mans Ultimate received an update, so in this video, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what that update is like and my first impressions following on from 8 hours of testing the update. Thank you to everyone that clicks the like button, welcome to all the new subscribers, and of course, a special mention to all the channel members and people that support us monthly. Really appreciate you allowing me to do this and remain totally independent. Is it a game-changing update? Well, not quite, but technically all updates are game-changing. What you'll find with this latest update is that they have added some nice new features. You've got the car radar there, and it does work really well as a car radar. It's just positioned in the screen. You can see all the other cars around you. It fades away when there's no one near you. It's great. It's exactly the same as Heli Corsa. They've got the start race procedure, which definitely had a really good effect on making the starts of race more natural, more organic, and more intuitive, though I think it needs to be tweaked and dialed in a little bit more, but they're aware of that. And you also had some changes in the car handling, which seems to make the cars a little bit less drifty and slidey, a little bit more pokey. Seems like the tyres might be a little bit peakier now, but it still drives basically exactly like R-Factor 2 does. It's very much, if you're a fan of R-Factor 2, it's still very much R-Factor 2-y in how it is. Now, they've also added a new hypercar, the BMW, with a livery that's included in the update, which is technically supposed to be art, but it just looks like someone's stolen a piece of the Berlin Wall and then slapped it on a car. It looks absolutely terrible, but it's art, so we all have to clap it along and say it looks fantastic. Great participation from the artist. Congratulations for doing art. Really happy for you. It looks crap though. But it's free, so you can't really complain, and maybe some people do like it. Art is subjective. So, yes, you've got that, and that's about it, really. The game runs pretty much the same as it did before. I don't think they've really worked on any performance updates or optimizations in that regard. I found that on my 3080 Ti with my 5800 X3D chip running at 4K resolution, we have to run on medium to low graphics settings, and then we get about 115 to 125 FPS or so. It looks really quite nice though. Obviously it doesn't look as nice as AMS2, and I don't think it looks as nice as the first Assetto Corsa with shader patch and what have you. Especially doesn't look as nice whilst running as well as those games. But the trees, which is the most important part of how a race car simulator looks, the trees look fantastic, and generally I actually find the lighting and the general look of it to be really quite nice, even on those moderate settings. So it looks and runs reasonably well, but just not as good as some of those other titles on the market. It's kind of similar to iRacing in many ways. Looks better than iRacing, but kind of runs in a similar way where it's a little bit hokey-cokey at times. The game still has some stability issues that you need to be aware of. I had it crash a few times on me, especially when you're loading into a session. It can crash. You can then get back into the session, so hopefully they're still working on that to fix that, but you'd be aware of that. The game's a little bit unstable. Also worth mentioning that the online sometimes disconnects in terms of your player profile, and then the scoring from the game doesn't display in game, and you have to close the game and reopen it. Again, I think that's just something they're going to be working on, and maybe there's quite a few people loading into it last night when we were testing it just as the update rolled out, so that might have been causing that problem. They are aware of those issues. They are working on those issues. You can tell that the developer behind Le Mans Ultimate is working really quite hard. So that sort of goes over the basic changes in the update. The crucial and key thing though is what I found whenever I play Le Mans Ultimate is that I actually have really good races. Now, I think that's a mixture of the nature of R-Factor 2 or LMU's physics now, in that the tyres and the cars are very easy to drive. It's very approachable, it's very forgiving, as it should be, especially with LMP2 cars and GT cars. They shouldn't be the craziest vehicles to drive. But also the netcode is really good, and the way that the servers operate with the ranking, the safety rating, and how that puts you into splits, it all comes together to mean that you load up the game and you do genuinely get really good races. We did 5 races, I think, last night, and before that I'd done a couple of races as well just before the update. And even at 6 AM, or we were doing it in the afternoon yesterday, there was people racing and the races were good. So for the £25 that it costs to get it, if you want a sim where you can buy it and you can get a good race, it does deliver on that. And I have to be honest, the racing and the races ended up playing much more realistically than the racing that you tend to get in iRacing. Most notably is that in iRacing, people tend to spin in the weirdest of locations, car contacts do the weirdest of things, and you just have really unnatural races and really unnatural flow to the races in iRacing, really limited side-by-side action in iRacing, whereas in Le Mans Ultimate, you have a lot of close side-by-side, tit-for-tat racing and more strategic manoeuvring as a driver, largely due to how the tyre model allows you to actually push the tyres a bit, overdrive a bit, lock up without going in a straight line forever. But also, if a car in front of you locks up, you can then exploit the fact their tyres are flash heated and they're not going to make the corner perfectly. There's just a lot more nuance and subtlety, but in a way that all comes together to produce much more realistic racing than iRacing. As I'd say as well, you kind of get you get more forgiving driving in ACC, and that can have really good racing as well. But LMU's a lot more nuanced, and I do think the netcode in LMU and R-Factor 2 is just a lot better than anything else on the market, to be honest. Race Room's quite close, but LMU netcode especially, it's better than AC1, it's better than ACC, it's better than iRacing. You can have a bit of contact, and that's, you know, it's absolutely fantastic. So we just get really good racing whenever I play it, which I think is the most important part of a driving simulator. Now, those points and stuff we said there is we're dangerously too positive. So to be negative, the force feedback in LMU is still pretty rubbish. I think if you like ACC dull, uninformative force feedback, you might like it, because I think it's got a little bit more detail to it than ACC, for example, and the cars are a little bit more slidey in LMU, which then translates to the force feedback a bit better. But if you like this sort of detail of tyre slip feel and like real precise high fidelity force feedback that you get in Assetto Corsa 1, especially Assetto Corsa 1, it's obviously by far the best sim for force feedback detail, but AC1, Automobilista 1, even Automobilista 2, despite Automobilista 2's weirdo physics, it has really quite detailed force feedback. But all 3 of those sims absolutely destroy the force feedback for detail of where the tyres are at, braking and what's going on, compared to LMU. With LMU just, you know, if you turn all the filtering off, it feels quite notchy and a bit limited in the actual detail that you feel. And then LMU's really over the top for like suspension, track details and superfluous noise, rather than that absolute tyre grip feel, if you know what I mean. You do get the forces for counter steer, for correcting the car, and it is very easy to drive, so I think that does mask the lack of detail that's in the force feedback. So we're not putting it in the church of force feedback at this point in time, that's for sure. But yeah, so ultimately though, at this point in time, LMU, I think it's chooching along really nicely. I think the developer's doing a really nice job on it. I think it's definitely still early access. It still has like sort of crashing and a bit of finicky stuff with it and stuff that needs polishing more. It doesn't feel like a 1.0 title yet. But I am really enjoying seeing the progress of the game, the polish of it, and maybe the polish or the content that's coming to it at the moment isn't shiny stuff, but the developer is working on the fundamentals, and you can kind of sense that fundamental work that's going on in there to build the foundations of what I think could end up being a really quite a spectacular simulator moving into the future. For £25, you can get races. I think you'll have a good time. If you don't want to fiddle around with a new sim, I think you could just wait and then pick it up later, to be honest. What have you got to lose? So yeah, there you go. That is a first impressions summary of Le Mans Ultimate following its update. Hopefully that's useful for you. That was a bit of a brain dump. But yes, thank you for watching this. Thanks for subscribing, as I say. Thanks for clicking the like button. Till the next one, make yourselves a giant cup of tea, drink it, make another tea, drink that, and then make another one. And then drink that. Take care, and goodbye.